Repeal and replace, but replace with what? Republican Randy Forbes of Virginia was one of the few people who was actually inside that Supreme Court room when the historic decision was announced. Congressman, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Christine. It's great to be with you.
All right, the Republican Study Committee put out a 27-page document containing more than 200 pieces of health care legislation proposed by congressional Republicans. 200 pieces of legislation. I read a lot in this. I have this document. I read a lot in here about abortion, about tort reform, about repealing it outright. But I don't really see anything that really deals with the overall problem of lack of coverage and diminished quality in return for the world's most expensive health care. If Obamacare is repealed, what replaces it? What replaces it that is better, sir?
Well, Christine, I think we have to start with the fact that what did we get from Obamacare? And as you just mentioned, when Obamacare was passed, we were told that we were going to have greater access. When you look, in point of fact, we're having less access. We're hearing doctors time and time again saying they're leaving the system and we're not going to have the access that we need to have for medical treatment. The second thing, our costs have gone up, not down. So we believe that there are a series of things that you could do. One of the things that we think we should do is keep some of the provisions that make sense, like not penalizing people for pre-existing conditions when they're getting health insurance.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, sir, but we are keeping those because the Supreme Court has ruled that we're keeping those things. This is the law of the land. I mean, honestly, it has been ruled that this will be, wouldn't it be better if people would spend less time adding to uncertainty about what's going to happen next and instead educate their constituents and small businesses about how to adapt to the mandates?
Well, Christine, that would make sense except for the fact that as we travel across the country, we realize that with this bill, we're going to lose thousands of jobs, and that's what we're told by employers. That's not some pontification.
Is there
that's what
evidence
employers
of that?
are saying.
I mean, I know employers are concerned. What is the evidence? Give me the one piece of evidence that says that.
The best evidence is from the mouth of the employers, Christine, and if you ask employers across this country, we are seeing not just a few, but literally thousands of them telling us every place we go, they're not going to expand their businesses. Some of them are cutting back. It's going to be a job killer because they can't afford these huge taxes that the Supreme Court says this bill puts on them. The second thing, Christine, is important to remember. The Supreme Court didn't say this was a good bill. They said it was a constitutional bill, but Justice Roberts made it clear this court wasn't going to protect us from bad political decisions of our elected leaders. This Obamacare was a bad political decision. That's why it's important. It's not just rhetoric. It's important if we're going to create jobs in this country that we not continue to pass legislation that's going to kill those jobs. The second thing is it's important that we actually get health care to people, which we can do a much better job by selling insurance across state lines. It's going to get costs down. Also, we would put more money, I would, on medical research, which I think could change the health care curve much better than some of the stuff we're doing.
Let me bring in Governor Romney here. He says it's up to the voters to repeal Obamacare now. Listen.
This is a time of choice for the American people. Our mission is clear. If we want to get rid of Obamacare, we're going to have to replace President Obama. My mission is to make sure we do exactly that.
If President Obama wins in November, sir, are you ready to concede that the president signed a law, the Supreme Court upheld it, and the voters endorsed it? So then, will you move on?
Well, Christine, I don't think that voters are going to endorse it, and just because the president has signed a law into effect doesn't mean it's a good one. This president also wants to have literally billions of dollars of defense cuts, but we're going to continue fighting those. Just because the president signed it into law doesn't mean it's good law. I don't think Obamacare is good law, and I think it's incumbent upon us to try to change it and make something that's going to work for the American people.
So in the end, is it as much uncertainty today as there was even a week ago? And isn't it uncertainty that was the thing that the GOP was saying was the problem with Obamacare in the first place, that businesses and people didn't know how to handle the mandates?
Well, Christine, as you know, when the Democrats voted and passed it out, they had a lot of uncertainty in what was in it. As you remember the famous phrase that they had to pass it before they would know what's in it.
But that's ancient history. The Supreme Court has ruled on this. It's been 2 years since it happened. Shouldn't you be helping your constituents understand, telling people what the mandates are, that small businesses with 51 people or more will have to pay a fine if they don't figure out how to get people covered, that actually only 4% of small businesses will be affected. Anybody under 50 employers doesn't have to worry about a giving, and teaching people about the state exchanges. Shouldn't we be educating about it now instead of still fighting about it?
Christine, the more they find out about this, the more they are opposed to this. Whether you talk to doctors, whether you talk to health care providers, hospitals or small businesses, the more they find out, the more they realize this is a bad decision and they want it overturned. I think that's what we're going to see them doing in November, and that's what we're going to continue to fight to make sure happens.
Well, I appreciate you coming by. We're going to talk more in this program about what small businesses in particular need to do and how they need to start planning now for this. Congressman, thank you so much. Randy Forbes from Virginia. Have a nice weekend. They're the most vulnerable players in the bitter debate over access